What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with a Hasbro Star Wars market update. I've got a pretty wild assortment of stuff here. I've got ungraded mint-on cards, and I've got some graded stuff too that has all sold in the last few days. Before I dig in any further, I want to say thank you to Shane Harlan. He is my latest Patreon supporter. I really appreciate the support from all my Patreon supporters as we try to build out the channel. And as I mentioned in a previous video, I will definitely do some more giveaways here later this month or whenever I get back from some family travel. So be on the lookout for those. And all of my Patreon supporters, please be patient. I've got a number of Star Wars comic books at CGC being graded, and I'm talking a lot of them. And I plan on giving each and every one of you guys one whenever they arrive back. It could be later this year or it could be into next year. But I just ask for some patience. You guys deserve it. You guys are Patreon supporters, so you guys will each be getting one. Let's go ahead and dig right in. We've got VC98 Starkiller. This is unpunched. Includes a star case. I was a little bit surprised by the price for this one. It sold for $118 plus $10 shipping, so $128. But what surprised me about it is that, you know, in the description it mentions that the card has some light wear around the border of the card, as well as on the back by the punch hole. The blister has some scratches and scuffs. So the seller very clearly states that this Starkiller is not in mint condition, yet it's still sold for $128, which I think is a pretty high number. So, you know, it looks pretty good in the photos, and, you know, I think he's probably just being overly cautious to fellow collectors, probably an 85 grade at worst. But, you know, the description didn't seem to stop the bidders. So $128 took that home. You know, I think it's in line with recent sales for Starkiller. That's definitely one that is moving up, and I think the curious thing will be whether this one continues to go up as we get closer to next spring, when the Clone Wars animated style card back arrives. So people maybe wanted to get that one to have alongside the other one, and maybe that drives the price up even more. We'll see. Another one, this first photo is not great, but this one was Vc100 Starkiller. We've already talked about Starkiller many times, and it continues to go up. This one was $191.50 plus $10 shipping, so let's call it $200 in round numbers. It looked pretty good, but the photos were a little bit blurry. It did have some creasing there above the top of the hanger tab there. So despite that pretty major crease, this one still sold for $200 after shipping. So we've seen Starkiller ungraded go for $250 plus. We've seen a graded one go for $500 plus. So Starkiller continues to be one that is escalating in price no matter what the rest of the line is doing. And I don't know about the rest of you. I'd love to hear some comments below, but it does seem like we're starting to see a little bit of a pause. Not a huge pause, but just a little pause in prices where things are flatlining a little bit. I noticed it with vintage Kenner stuff, that a lot of stuff at auction is selling for, you know, maybe a little bit less than expected. It's very minute, the difference between now and last month, but it does seem like we're starting to see a little bit of a peak maybe in the market. And we've already seen it. You know, I know a lot of you don't care about this, but in the comic market, the Star Wars comic market, we've seen a major pause. Prices have come way back down, as they have really across all comics, from their peaks in April and May. And they've been in a steady free fall since then, which I'm fine with because I'm still buying right now. But prices have definitely come back down. I'd say a good solid 20 to 25% minimum for Star Wars books, as well as any other books that are graded or ungraded. So it's just an interesting fact. And I'm wondering if the action figure market is having a delayed response to that. Part of it might be because of the lack of news. There's just not a lot of Disney Plus news right now for the Star Wars series. Are we going to see an uptick in prices for action figures and Star Wars comics as we get closer to the book of Boba Fett coming out in December? Who knows? I'm not Nostradamus, but I pretend to be in these videos. You know, it's really funny. I mean, all I do is summarize stuff, and you guys love it. So I appreciate that, because I'm not very smart, okay? And all these videos is summarizing other people's data. That's all it really is. So I appreciate you guys tuning in for it. Now, here's one that has really come back down in price a little bit, and it might have been conditioned to a certain extent, but this is the no Wookie braids Boba Fett VC186. So as you can see, this one did not have the Wookie braids packed in. And we saw that one go for insane money a few months back when this figure first came out, kind of May-ish. It was going, I don't even remember the number, but it was like $250 plus. And this one sold for $127.50. Now, again, as I talked about, I mean, the card looks pretty good there, but it does have some very minor indentations there on the card. You can see in the light, and props to the seller for including those photos. You can see some little scratches and indentations there. So this is probably one he picked up at retail. But still, you know, it's probably like an 85 grade, if I had to guess, at a minimum, despite those kind of very minor flaws from handling. But $127.50, that's a good solid 50% less than where we saw some of the others have sold in the past. So now might be the time to keep an eye out for this one. If this is, you know, if you're into those kind of errors and like missing accessories and things like that, now might be the time to start looking for one, because that price went a little bit lower than I expected, despite the flaws to the card back. Now, this is not TVC, but I wanted to show it because it was really cool. This is a Revenge of the Sith Republic gunship, and you want to talk about a massive item. This is an AFA graded Republic gunship from 2005. It was rated 85 by AFA. Now, the seller did note that it did have a crack in the case, as you can see. It looks like in the on the side here. Right in here, the case was cracked. So, you know, it's still sold for $280 plus shipping. I wonder what this would have sold for if the acrylic case was not damaged. So you can see here he's got some tape going on the back there. This is probably one that whoever bought it's probably going to resubmit it to AFA to get it recased. It's the recasing cost is not terribly expensive, but I think it probably would be for something this size. I have sent items in the past in to get recased in the past, but anyway, I just thought it was an interesting item because you never see something this big. I mean, this thing has to be probably what, 2 feet long by 2 feet high, so it's a big item, but pretty cool to see that that graded despite the flaws. So $280 is what that one went for. Now, here was a massive lot. This was a vintage collection lot with a lot of army building. I mean, look at all of those Force Awakens stormtroopers. We've got some Mandalorians. We've got Vader, Rogue One Vader. Mostly recent issues, but man, what a massive lot that was. And it was all just being auctioned off, and it sold for $275 plus $25 shipping, so about $300 for all those. Which, I mean, that probably equates to roughly $10 a figure. So that was a pretty good deal, I think. You know, obviously it's a lot of recent issues, so you know, I would say that it's not like it's TVC 1.0, for example, but some of those are pretty desirable figures, like the Rey, for example, and or both Reys really. And anyway, you know, if you're into army building, that was a pretty good cheap way to do it. So $275 was the final sales price on that massive lot. You never see lots like that go up, so I thought I'd show that. Okay, we got, I think after this one, we're going to have nothing but graded, AFA graded vintage collection. And one figure that I've talked about in the past that has really jumped up in price is VC98 Grand Moff Tarkin. Now, for a reference point, earlier this year, I bought a uncirculated 90 grade. It was already graded by AFA U90, and I paid $99 plus, I think, $10 shipping. It might have been $99 shipped. I can't remember, but an awesome price. Don't get me wrong. But this one is ungraded, unpunched, and it looked to be in pretty amazing condition overall. And it sold for $227.50. And then there was also one that was graded. And now this one was graded by Collector Archive Services 95. And it was punched already. So it was a punched example. It's still got a 95, which, you know, I think I've talked about this in past videos, especially I did a video that talked about grading mint on card figures and how whether it's punched or unpunched, that does not affect the card score. So it can still get a 95 apparently, despite it being punched, as long as the punch is clean. But anyway, this was CAS 95, and it sold for a big number, $510 plus $25 shipping. So that's a big number for a graded Grand Moff Tarkin. And I think that number is actually higher than what the AFA 9.0 one sold by Jeff's Collectible Empire a few weeks back. So VC98 just seems to be really going up here lately. That same seller also had an unpunched Revenge of the Jedi Princess Leia. And now this one has the Boba Fett offer on it. Now, Boss Bounty was kind enough to educate my stupid self. And he said that, you know, if it has that offer sticker on it, along with the paperwork inside the blister, which this one does, then it's not the SDCC version. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was a retail version for the Revenge and also an SDC exclusive that is offerless without the paperwork inside the blister. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking for this Revenge Slave Leia, that if you see one without the offer sticker, but it does have the paperwork inside the blister, that means that someone took that sticker off the card back. Just something to keep in mind and to be watchful for. So anyway, this is the retail version. It is unpunched, and it graded 85 with collector archive services, and it still didn't affect the price. It sold for $501. Now let's relate it back to the STC exclusive that we saw sold last week. That one was the STC exclusive. It was offerless. Clearly, it didn't have the paperwork inside the blister, and I believe it was an AFA 9.0. No, I'm sorry, it was an AFA 8.5, and that one sold for big money. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I want to say it was about $1,300 or $1,400. $1,280 maybe might have been the price. So that gives you an indication that this one sold, that the SDCC version sold for 2.5 times what the retail version sold for in a similar grade. A couple of low grade ones. This was a uncirculated 8.0 R2D2 vintage collection, and that one sold for $109.99 plus shipping. And the other 8.0 that sold was a nice one, the Commander Cody with the Fett offer and foil logo. That was only an 8.0, but it still sold for $250 with free shipping. So a couple of data points there for slightly lower grades with these modern figures. I mean, most collectors who collect graded TVC tend to stay at like 8.5 or 85s and 90s, things like that. But it just shows to me that there's still demand, even with slightly lower grades, silver level grades, that collectors maybe that have a smaller pocketbook would like to include these as part of their collection. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just showing these 8.0s really because there's still a market for it, no matter what it grades at. And that's a good sign that the TVC line, in terms of graded items, is still alive and well and doing great. So a few others that sold. This is an 8.5 Dr. Aphra. This one sold for $152.50 plus shipping. Me personally, I still think, I've talked about this in the past, but I think VC129 is a good one to get. You can still get this one relatively inexpensively, ungraded. I think Aphra has a big future that Disney is slow playing. I expect her to have some either appearances in these upcoming shows or to have her own show outright. And there is definitely a lull with Dr. Aphra related collectibles. Her comic is flatlined. The TVC is still relatively inexpensive, and I would recommend picking it up. And Only One Kenobi and Boss Bounty have also mentioned that there's a no warning label European version for this that doesn't have the warning label. That one is extremely rare and does go for big money, $250 plus. So that's one to look out for. Me personally, I've never seen one for sale. It's as rare as hen's teeth, as my friends across the pond would say. So if you do see one that doesn't have that warning label in the upper right-hand corner, that's a European-only release and is highly desirable. So grab it if you can see it. Another one that sold, this was an uncirculated 9.0 Nikto. That one sold for $220. I thought that was a pretty good price. Really nice unpunched example. Pretty good price for a graded TVC uncirculated. I mean, ungraded, I've seen Nikto, as we've talked about, has been really jumping up in price, $140 plus ungraded. So to get one for $220 plus shipping is a pretty good price. Here was an uncirculated 8.5 Han Solo from the movie, the young Han Solo. This is one that most collectors seem to be kind of ignoring, but nevertheless, at auction, this one sold for $91 with free shipping. So that's a pretty good price there, I think, for a graded Solo. An uncirculated Range Trooper with the multi-language pill, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's got the age he died on there, so I assume that this is a Canadian card back. Let me see here. I know it's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, it looks like this is the Hasbro Canada. It's got Hasbro Canada right here, so I'm assuming that this is a Canadian version of the Range Trooper. I have to go back and look at mine to see if mine has the multi-language name pill on it or not. I don't know. But this is uncirculated 9.0. It sold for $93 with free shipping. I thought that was a great price. Another one that I was keeping an eye on that I would love to have had I think I stayed away from it just because of the card wave. You can see at the bottom of the card how much wave on the card there was. But it did have the 3-tier grading, and it was an uncirculated 90 Vintage Collection Zuckuss. This was a convention exclusive. 90 for the card, blister 85, figure 90. So really nice high-grade foil Zuckuss. It was nice. I just, you know, me being picky, I think that card wave kind of turned me off. But it still sold for $210 shipped. So another data point there. And then finally, let's finish it off with a couple of Boba Fetts. This was an AFA 8.5 that sold for $100 plus $20 shipping. So let's call it $120. So 8.5 with the Classic View label. And then this is the Clear View label with the label up top. And this is the original issue from 2010 with the Boba Fett offer, graded 8.5. And that one sold for $150. So I think it's interesting that the reissue in the same grade with, the reissue Boba Fett sold for $120 after shipping versus the original issue sold for $150 shipped. So only paying $30 more could have got you the original issue Boba Fett in the same grade. Just something to keep in mind, to just be patient, I guess. But, like I said, some collectors just don't like that Clear View label up top, and that could have been the case there. But anyway, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I try to do these updates regularly, and I appreciate you watching. Again, to my Patreon supporters, thanks so much for all of your channel support. And to my existing subscribers, thank you again for watching, and I'll be back soon.